Okay people, so the anime awards recently went down and there's a lot of controversy on some of the picks for anime of the year and so many other different awards that were handed to certain titles, so we definitely got to talk about that. The creators of Boruto recently had an interview where the artist Mikio Ikamoto spoke about certain aspects of the series, so we're definitely going to dive into that. Toei Animation recently has been having a little bit of rumblings with the community in regards to certain aspects that came out regarding potential usage of AI in the future. The year-end halfway sales have recently been released for manga in 2025, and there's definitely somewhat of a pattern but also somewhat of a shocker for certain aspects of series that actually are doing very well. So we're gonna dive into that and much more in this episode of FORNEVER News, the only news source that provides anything and everything anime and manga related, and we don't bore you, we get into it. Let's do it. Okay people, so we are back in this new format for FORNEVER News. Hope you guys enjoy, because there's a lot of things that I wanted to talk about today that have went down in the world of anime and manga. In particular, one of the biggest things that I wanted to focus in on is because there's a bit of controversy surrounding it, and also it's become very important for the community regarding the Crunchyroll Anime Awards. In case you don't know, once a year Crunchyroll does a big event, and it's kind of gotten to a point where they do like a big center stage in Japan and all sorts of stuff where they hand awards to certain titles of certain anime. There was a little bit of controversy, I want to say, over the last couple of years regarding the fact that it seemed as though Crunchyroll mainly picked anime that were under their kind of tutelage, so to speak, the ones that they have licensed, which at the end of the day, it is the Crunchyroll Anime Awards, so they are more than free to pick whatever titles they see fit. Also, they for the most part have pretty good picks on certain aspects of certain awards that they hand to certain titles. But yeah, with this one in particular, there was one series that kind of cleaned house and got an astronomical amount of awards, and some people are not necessarily the most enthusiastic about it, just because yeah, it got like almost I think 10 different awards, and that series is Solo Leveling. Because going through the 2025 winners, anime of the year was Solo Leveling, best new series was Solo Leveling, which technically it wasn't the new series, but kind of sort of, because at the end of the day season 1 aired in 2023 or a few years back anyway, and ultimately the new season, it's technically like a new season, but do you consider it a new series? I'm not sure exactly where they were going with that, but yeah, it got best new series. I mean, technically the main character was like a reinvented person, so if they're going with that, then sure, why not? Best action, Solo Leveling. Best main character, Song Jin-woo. Best score, aka the best music, Solo Leveling. Best ending sequence, Request, Solo Leveling. They got best voice artist for a couple of different categories as well, and yeah, it won a massive amount of awards. Like, don't get me wrong, there was other series that kind of got some pretty cool awards that I definitely think were deserving. Best continuing series, Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer is always, you know, a really good treat. Must protect at all costs character, Anya Forger, Spy Family. I've always thought that was, you know, pretty cool little series of whatnot. But yeah, if you look at the winners, it almost felt as though this was the Solo Leveling Anime Awards, because it won a massive amount of awards. And if you've been following me here on this channel for some time, especially as of recent with the latest season of Solo Leveling, while I definitely was for the most part very much so enthusiastic about it, you would know if you heard some of my old FORNEVER News episodes where I was talking about that I was basically just giving it non-stop praise. I watched it in multiple different versions. Like, I was really through the roof for Solo Leveling as far as like just how awesome and epic I felt it was. But I will say in retrospect that some of the criticisms towards Solo Leveling is somewhat valid. I definitely feel as though expectations weren't necessarily quite met towards the end. There was some stuff that I don't want to say I felt betrayed, but I just expected something of a bit of a different outcome. So that's mainly where my gripe with it is. And I guess a bit of the criticism regarding Solo Leveling kind of just being like, yo, check out man's aura, yo, man's is lit, it's like, yo, that's awesome, and every week that is something that is going to make you easily go crazy and through the roof for like, yo, this is it, Solo Leveling is fire. But at the same time, a level of substance can go a long way, and that's something that, while Solo Leveling has certain aspects of that, a lot of times it more so focuses in on just, yo, how epic is this, yo, how awesome is this, yo, how cool is this? And sometimes there's stuff that is like, yo, you know, I want a little bit more depth in there and less of like, yo, this is flashy and it looks awesome and it looks amazing, and more just like the story, because the solo leveling story is very simple. Of dude, you know, has these things happen to him, ultimately wakens to the system, giving him kind of like instructions on how to maneuver, and then it's kind of like, well, he has the goal of like, you know, helping out his family or whatnot, and then after that is just kind of like, all right, where do we go from here? Again, my main frustrations lie within the fact that it just kind of felt like there could have been a little bit more substance, and kind of just, it felt a little bit betraying of my expectations towards the end of the season. That isn't to say that it doesn't deserve many of the accolades, because again, I wouldn't have been praising it and going through the roof every week if it wasn't that it was a really awesome series. But when you see like new anime that are coming out right now, like To Be Hero X, where it's just like, I feel like there's so much substance to the story, the plot twist is just so unique and different. It's like, yeah, Solo Leveling, because it's based out of Korea, it kind of has a little bit of a different twist than the standard anime that is written like, you know, in Japan and things like that. But when I see newer series that are taking way more risks and way more chances, like To Be Hero X, that's where I look at Solo Leveling like, it's great and some of the accolades are deserved, but the way the Crunchyroll Awards just like said, this one, a little bit of a stretch for me. Regardless, shout out to Solo Leveling. Definitely wanted to give it its props and say, yo, it did its thing. Just also the wait for the next season of Solo Leveling isn't something that I'm very much so excited about either. There was a break in between season 1 and 2 of about a year and some change, close to 2 years. They're talking about a long wait for the next season, so we'll see what happens. But shout out to Solo Leveling regardless. Gotta give props where they're due. Okay, moving forward, Boruto fans, over the last several months there's been quite a few pieces of Boruto news. In particular, it was recently revealed that back in December, the Boruto 2 Blue Vortex anime, or in particular the Boruto anime, let me not say 2 Blue Vortex because I don't know how they're going to brand this thing when the anime returns or whatnot, but it said on the official Studio Pierrot website back in like December, I guess, that the anime was actually in production and hence returning. So a lot of those videos that I made in between then, when I said, hey, yo, the Boruto anime is gonna come back, yo, there's a lot of hints to that, I was definitely on the money, on the ball game, and correct in all of those things that I said. And it's been out there on the website, and it's been out there for some time that, no, the Boruto anime is returning. And even though they're doing the Bleach stuff and their primary focus, especially in the public eye and in the mainstream, has 110% in the Bleach 1000-year blood war, which rightfully so, because Bleach deserves it. It's been so long, and you know, it's just been winning, and it's just been great. Bleach has been fantastic, phenomenal, awesome, everything you could say good about it. It just embodies that. So without a shadow of a doubt, definitely Studio Pierrot putting a lot of their efforts and a lot of their mindset into promoting Bleach has been the right move. But behind the scenes, it seems as though they full on have been at work at slowly but surely making sure that the Boruto anime is going to return, and probably a lot sooner than people imagine. I mean, I always thought like it's not going to be a drastic wait in between the Boruto anime ending and the Boruto anime returning, simply because they put out that statement and that message right as the last episode aired, where they were basically like, yo, it's gonna be continued in a part 2, don't worry about it. If there was no plans, if this was just them spitballing in the dark, they would not hint or any of that sorts of the Boruto anime returning. Like, you know, they would have just left it as is and let fans hope and pray until it actually happened. But they full on had intentions of bringing Boruto anime back, and they pretty much proclaimed that as the anime went off air. So for myself, I assumed that it would probably be sooner than later, and it seems as though to be the case, because like I said, back in December, it just came to light for a lot of people that the Boruto anime has already been in production, and it was officially confirmed on Studio Pierrot's official website. So very, very big stuff, and the Boruto anime in general is seemingly on the rise and slowly but surely going to be returning. I'm going to still keep the expectations at bay, just because they are full on committed to wrapping up the Bleach anime, and there's still one more core for Bleach's 1000-year blood war that has not even had, you know, a date announcement yet, or a trailer for that matter, for this final core. So still wait and be patient as far as let them cook and finish up the main course of what they're doing right now with Bleach, but Boruto is coming. Just be prepared. Also, just to kind of emphasize how much the expectations are there and how much the excitement from the fandom is there for the Boruto anime's return, apparently it's been floating around that Boruto 2 Blue Vortex has become the second most searched time skip on the internet, only behind One Piece. So people looking forward to the Boruto time skip, the interest is 1000% there. Like, I'll never forget when people were excited for the One Piece time skip. That was something that was inescapable, and that was at a time far before the One Piece anime and the One Piece franchise became what it is today, because One Piece now is just, you know, a conglomerate. But back in the, you know, days before the time skip happened, the interest was crazy, and the West at the very least wasn't really on One Piece like that, like it is now. So for Boruto to be second to that is speaking volumes. Yeah, the Boruto manga doesn't sell like Naruto or any of that, but the interest and the excitement and the eyes in general are 100,000% there for Boruto's return. So very much so excited to let you guys know that people are really interested in the Boruto time skip, and Studio Pierrot is very aware of that, hence why they kind of, you know, updated the site back in December to let you know the anime is coming. Over the last several months, there's been quite a few pieces of Boruto news. In particular, there was recently an interview where Mikio Ikamoto basically spoke on Boruto series, some very interesting questions about the series itself and the story. So we're gonna run through these questions and we'll talk some more after the fact, because some of these definitely make you wonder. They started off the first question with, tell us why Boruto changed the way he called Sasuke. After he helped him escape Konoha, Boruto felt much stronger that Sasuke was really his master and that he was his pupil. He started to call him master the next day. Sasuke was reluctant at first, but he was indeed Boruto's master, so he gradually accepted it. Basically, it kind of went from like that was his father's childhood friend, his father's BFF, all of that stuff, to, okay, nah, this is my guy. So it just kind of expresses the dynamic, the way Boruto maneuvers or whatnot, of how he feels about Sasuke moving forward. Because I mean, at the end of the day, when the world betrayed him and even Sasuke had his doubts because of Ada's powers that was manipulating everything, ultimately Sasuke still, even if he was reluctant, went on this, you know, journey with Boruto. And so of course you're gonna look at somebody like, yo, when everybody's against me and you're one of the only people that actually believe me, you're one of the only people that is actually showing me love, yeah, dog, you him. So mad respect to that relationship in general. I love to see it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell to get all notifications on my videos. You know you want to, so hit them buttons. Thank you so much. Then Ada and Damon have cosmic space motif accessories on them. Why? I wanted them to stand out from usual Boruto Naruto characters, and since there are two characters with extraordinary abilities, I thought a cosmic motif would suit their design. From my understanding, I think like Ada has, what is it, like Saturn designs on some of her clothing or whatnot. So I guess, okay, I kind of get the question. It's not something that I'm like, oh my goodness, but I understand kind of getting into the detail of these two characters, that they're very important to the story, even though it feels like they kind of came in a lot later to things, because at the end of the day, pretty much they came in towards the end of the anime's run for that matter, but they're still very much so important. So even the details like that are interesting to note, because at the end of the day, it contributes to their characters, their motifs, and in general who they are. Was the power Damon felt from Himawari actually Kurama's? Now this is a very big one, because I remember a lot of us were curious that moment where Damon looked back and he was like, whoa, it almost looked like, not necessarily intimidated, because the way Damon maneuvers, it looks like homie just, you know, little homie got heart, you know what I'm saying, little homie, he's brave, but at the same time he was bewildered and shocked at Himawari. And a lot of us at that time, we didn't even know about the Kurama chakra yet, and we was just kind of like, so it's definitely interesting to ask that question. What did Damon feel, why he was so shocked at her power at that moment? Damon actually felt the future synergy potential of Himawari, who is of Uzumaki and Hyuga bloodline, with Kurama's chakra. To me, that seems more like he sensed essentially that, yo, something about her is strong, because again, she has this mixture of those two, and at the time he probably didn't understand what the Kurama chakra was. So it's just like, yo, there's crazy potential. Think like how people would feel Gohan's power level for split seconds back when he was younger, before he would actually ultimately tap path into being the strong and powerful being that he becomes. Like Raditz checking the scouter and seeing power level 700. Oh, whoa. Now it's just saying it's an average level. That's kind of the same concept, where basically her power level was like, he could sense that there was some crazy power there, but couldn't quite grasp it. All he knew is like, there's a lot of different combos in there, and this is strong. What is that? What is written in the book Jura always reads, oh god, let's see, is actually Jura's personal notebook. It contains various informations, daily discoverings, things that interest him or is curious about. It's an important tool for him to keep track of the growing mass of information he learns on a daily basis. I feel like that right there is a massive setup, that if something happens to that notebook, or even somebody tries to play with his notebook, it's gonna be a problem. You mess with homie's notebook, you're gonna feel the wrath of Jura, because if this is something that, you know, we see that the Divine Tree people, especially Jura, they're in seek of knowledge. They want to understand what is love, all of these things that they're interested in and whatnot. So if somebody attacks that book, let's just say him and Boruto go at it and the book gets damaged, or Boruto tries to take the book from him or whatnot, it's gonna be a massive problem, because that is clearly very important to him, that notebook. During his talk with Amado, Boruto sees a glimpse of the future. Is it related to Koji's ability, the 10 directions pre-science? That's definitely a good question, considering the fact that Koji's ability has been a game changer for the entirety of the series. Everything changed ever since we've seen Koji's ability. Let's find out what this is about. Is one of Momoshiki's personal abilities. It allows him to see bits and fragments of the future. It may seem similar to Koji's ability in some ways, but unlike pre-science, it's not a shinjutsu and considered inferior in terms of performance. And that makes total sense, because just think about it. One of the big things where Momoshiki was terrifying Boruto and anybody that heard was him constantly telling him, you're gonna lose everything, it's gonna be horrible, you know, it's about to be bad for you. And he would always hint little inklings and kind of just keep jabbing at Boruto constantly with this vision of the future that he would see. But it seems to be the case that, at the very least, in comparison to what Koji can do, Koji can see the entirety of, like, if there's 1,000 different routes, he could kind of see it all. It seems as though Momoshiki could kind of see like just potential main plot points, but also so fragmented, and also the fact that there's potential for things to actually change and for disasters to be averted, that basically Momoshiki was kind of using the same ability that Koji uses for good, but perversing it and kind of just manipulating it to terrorize Boruto, like, this is all gonna happen, while Koji's like, yo, this could happen, let's try to avert it because there's other options. Momoshiki was like, nah, this is the only thing, bad. That's essentially the case. And again, it seems as though Koji's is just way more stronger, which is very, very interesting, considering that Momoshiki is this, you know, Otsutsuki being that traveled through space and all of these other things, but the ability that was gifted to him via Amado, Kashin Koji, his ability to see, well, we say gifted, but we're not sure of all the technicalities of how this ability came to be, considering it was born after the fact of the battle against Ishiki Otsutsuki. Ultimately, it's interesting that Koji's ability just trumps whatever Momoshiki can do. This one right here is interesting, but I also want to throw some type of my own pushback to it. And that's the question where they ask, where does and how does Himawari live after part 1, essentially after all of the things that happen with Naruto and Hinata, where essentially they get put in that, you know, dreamlike state. At her own request, she lives alone in her family's home. She feels that they will somehow return and wants to protect their home until they return. I'm gonna throw pushback that there were definitely some people around there, so while her parents were asleep, ultimately she was still fine and taken care of. I mean, they probably are trying to play it more along the lines of, you know, think Naruto as he was coming up, that pretty much he was on his own in the, you know, apartment that he was in, and how Hiruzen never really was there like that. So it seems as though they 110% are trying to make Himawari closer to her father, while of course Boruto is closer to like Sasuke, where Boruto wants to be more like Sasuke. Himawari's life is reflecting more of her father, you know, the Kurama chakra inside of her, the kind of being a little more alone than, you know, a lot of her peers or whatnot. So definitely it's adding those type of elements to kind of make her more like her father, but at the same time that just makes the character 10 times more interesting. And why I've always said, it seems as though ever since we hit the curve of the Boruto story, the female characters just became not only more important, but the writing of them has just become so interesting. Whereas, like, for example, Sarada Gaiden, that was something of a fascinating, you know, one-shot story or mini manga. And then this Himawari Himawari character, ever since the time skip, is like, you know, the Kurama chakra, her having to deal with everything that happened, you know, moving forward. Like, there's been so many interesting elements, and she's more like a Gohan type of character. And if anybody knows how epic and awesome Gohan from Dragon Ball Z is, then you understand that she reflects more of like Son Gohan. What's Kawaki's favorite taiyaki flavor? Alrighty then, not a question that I would personally ask, but at first he liked the chocolate taiyaki the best, but it didn't take long for him to settle down with bean paste flavor. And all I will respond to that with is cool beans. How do Hito's Shinjus get personalities? For example, Ryu's personality is nothing like Shinki. So essentially, how do the Divine Tree people get their personalities? Everyone has two faces, the one they show to the public and the one you keep for yourself. Something very useful to live in society. Since these Shinju has just been born not too long ago, they don't have this notion. They are thus primitive and true to their instincts. Even if they give a different vibe from their original selves, this may be a hint to the original's true personality. That is kind of cray-cray if you think about it. Basically, he's speaking from a metaphorical standpoint, which I love the depth that Ikemoto adds to these things, because as we've already spoke on several occasions, Kishimoto adds the overall picture and Ikemoto inks everything in and connects from dot A to B to C to D, etc., etc. Ultimately, that's how, you know, this whole thing comes about. So when you get layers like this where he's talking about like society and the mask that people walk around with, that is very fascinating to say the least. Which also makes me think, wow, so it kind of makes sense. Like, look at Moegi, for example, with her counterpart. With Moegi, she definitely has something there for Konohamaru, but keeps it at bay because of the image and because, you know, she's a Jonin and all of these different aspects. If she didn't have those restraints, so to speak, she might act a little more out and might have already been with Konohamaru because she wouldn't have had those societal restraints of kind of basically almost adding like anxiety and nervousness and all of those things, where the tree people is like, who cares about any of that stuff, dog? I like you. I'm nervous at the same time, because that is also a trait of Moegi, but ultimately, like, she would have gone for it, and she was kind of going for it. Obviously, there's this whole other aspect on top of things that kind of stopped it from happening, and eventually, of course, because of Jura's involvement, essentially that's to show that, yeah, that's somewhat of what Moegi might be outside of just the image that she portrays when she's, you know, being a shinobi and out in the Boruto verse. And even going to Ryu or whatnot, Shinki is a pretty brutal and strong dude. Like, Shinki has always showcased that he's Gaara's son through and through. He's a badass, and ultimately when you get certain aspects of like, well, look at Ryu, he kind of, if it wasn't for, again, this Divine Tree plot and Jura's involvement, he seemed like a pretty chill dude. So again, those are certain aspects of Shinki. Almost with Ryu kind of gave a little bit outside of when, you know, combat time came, like he was almost a little bit more soft-hearted than what we see with Shinki, because that's probably what Shinki is really like. But again, he has to portray this image because he is Gaara's son, and so on and so forth. Why we see at the end of the day, which is kind of more so true to Sasuke, because Sasuke really, like, he is who he is, you know what I'm saying? There's not much of a mask that Sasuke puts on. Maybe he could be a little bit more loving, especially with his family, and that's probably why you see that trait with his counterpart. Ultimately, it seems as though this is definitely a level of depth that I love to hear, and I hope it gets explored even further in the actual series, because Ikemoto really is cooking with that one. It's getting into something that the real world actually has, and kind of a reflection of sorts. And yeah, just in general, I wanted to cover all that stuff. I thought it was very interesting and fascinating, to say the least, that Ikemoto kind of touched up on more so details and things within the series, not just news about the series. Don't get me wrong, I love hearing, you know, the anime might be coming back and this and that, but to actually get these type of details of like Himawari's life in between, and, you know, the Shinju personalities and stuff like that, I think that that's really good, and it adds a little more depth to the story, the characters, and so on and so forth for Boruto 2 Blue Vortex. Shout out to Mikio Ikemoto, shout out to Boruto. Love to see it. Something that I definitely wanted to talk about regarding Toei Animation and a recent controversy that came about regarding usage of Now, I want to say it was somebody involved in Toei Animation that came out not long ago and basically proclaimed that essentially there will be certain projects that AI would be used upon, or it was a report, something along that ballpark came out where basically there was talks of AI being used for Toei Animation anime properties. And a lot of people immediately, and rightfully so, came with pushback and essentially were like, yo, what are you talking about? We don't want AI in the anime. This is the wrong move. Why are you doing this? There was a massive uproar about this thing because we already see where things are going, and if Toei is talking about things like that, then it made a lot of people question, like, so have y'all been using AI in anime already? And in case you don't know, some of the anime that Toei Animation houses are One Piece, Dragon Ball, Precure, Digimon. They have a lot of properties under their belt that people really love and enjoy, so a lot of people are very skeptical and to a certain degree angry about this, because at the end of the day, again, people, artists, people in general that care about this medium were giving massive amounts of pushback because, yo dog, protect the artists, protect the arts in general, protect all of these things that we love and care about. So then there's been some follow-ups and a lot of things have transpired since then regarding this whole debacle of Toei Animation's potential sort of hearings of using AI. Let's read exactly what was said and whether or not they actually are using AI, are going to use AI. Let's get to the bottom of this right now. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell to get all notifications on my videos. You know you want to, so hit them buttons. Thank you so much. Toei Animation claims no anime project has used AI in the midst of new controversy. After a new controversy regarding the giant studio behind Dragon Ball and One Piece came about, the studio released a new statement that clears up a misunderstanding, as well as promising to correct the source of this controversy. While this does indeed solve a few issues, the root of the problem still persists, and it seems the studio has yet to address the main concern of fans, which is the fact that there are still plans to incorporate artificial intelligence in the creation of anime. As confirmed by IT Media, Toei Animation released a new statement that reveals the studio has never used AI in any of their series, including the Magical Girl Wonderful Pretty Precure, which people assumed AI was used due to the misleading financial report they released. However, the fact still remains that the studio released a financial statement where they revealed plans to incorporate AI in very important processes such as making in-between frames, coloring, storyboard creation, and making backgrounds, all very important stages of production that require a lot of human expertise and labor. For those unaware, a few days ago, a new financial statement for the fiscal year ending in March 2025 revealed Toei was planning to integrate AI in collaboration with Preferred Networks, a company that invested in alongside Kodansha and TBS. This move was to quote-unquote seek to co-develop new business opportunities and improve the efficiency and quality of our production, capitalizing on synergies between AI and animation production technologies. This made fans very unhappy about this, as Toei was one of Japan's biggest and oldest anime studios, and this might lead to a chain, as well as the fact that it could lead to the loss of jobs for animators and staff. That part right there. Fortunately, one of One Piece's most integral animators, Vincent Chanzard, came out on Twitter and weighed his opinion on the matter, saying that this might just be a PR statement to make the company look more innovative and that there might not be any real changes to the production system. While his opinion might not be factual, at the end of the day, isn't he like an overseas dude? Is he actually in Japan with them? And especially at the end of the day, he is an animator. We've seen that there's a big distinction between the animators and the higher ups, and even knowledge for that matter, let alone the treatment and whatnot. So just shout outs to homie. Just an observation. It still gives fans hope as it comes from someone who is exposed to the system and how it works. Furthermore, the fact that Toei has yet to implement it and even came out denying that fact supports this theory. What makes the situation even more disappointing is the fact that, at least by industry standards, Toei's working conditions and how it treats its staff are good. Between the higher paid training programs for young animators and better scheduling, many Toei staff have praised the studio's working conditions. The fact that the studio is planning to use AI for aspects that are done by humans makes it disheartening and does not solve the issue of low labor in the anime industry at all. I'm gonna be all the way real. You may get these pieces faster, but at the end of the day, it's soulless AI generated. Like, anime has changed a lot in a short amount of time ever since it's really kind of blown up in the West and become the thing that it has become. And ultimately, with the usage of AI, like, it's just not going to be the same, and it's not going to feel the same, it's not going to look the same, it's not going to embody the same spirit, it's not going to embody any spirit at all, because it's going to be just AI generated. I'm grateful to hear, and I think that it is really, really a big deal, the fact that they have confirmed they haven't used AI at all. So Dragon Ball, One Piece, Digimon, Precure, none of these series have actually used AI. Whether you thought it was, whether you had a preconceived notion that may be, or things seemed that way, none of it was actually AI. It was all real people doing these things behind the scenes. So that's a good thing to note. However, it is worrisome that Toei Animation is not coming back with any sort of, pushback to say that, yeah, no, we don't have any plans for the future. So that's a little bit worrisome. Personally, I would love for AI to not be, implemented into anime. The way they're more so pushing and the global ideology that no, it's inevitable. Why? Why is that inevitable? Because the masses are being tricked into saying so? Because there's a cool couple of gadgets where you can make some inauthentic Ghibli art, like because you can make some, half decent chat GPT stuff. Like, why is it this is the inevitable? Like, if enough people give pushback, then ultimately end of story. Like, it's that simple. If enough people say, no, we don't want it, no, it's not happening, then there it is. It's just a matter of, at the end of the day, pushback towards, I guess the biggest thing would be the investors, the people that are putting their money into these things. If those people are pushing for that they want AI, but everybody else pushes like, we don't want that, and we're not going to support it. Like, the second we find out that this has AI in it, we're out of here, then that would actually solve the problem, point blank period. And it just seems like we're in a scenario right now where it's a really big battle, and ultimately, whichever way it goes is going to impact the industry as a whole. So we'll see what happens, but Toei claims they haven't used AI, and hopefully it remains that way, but there's no confirmation on the future. Okay, people, and moving forward, this is a very big deal because the manga industry, in case you don't know, over the last few years has dramatically shifted, with a lot of the heavy hitters coming to an end. The Attack on Titans of the world, the My Hero Academias, the Jujutsu Kaisens, a lot of the series that have been ongoing for quite some time coming to an end with their original manga serializations has definitely made somewhat of a shift in overall what the industry is going to be moving forward. In fact, I feel personally, from what I've seen blowing up in the mainstream, that shonen battle series, the traditional sense of it, like, with the boy with a dream and all of that, hasn't really been more so pushed forth to the mainstream as it used to be. It seems as though anime has been, which is not necessarily a bad thing, that it's essentially been kind of maneuvering and morphing into a different aspect, but it definitely seems as though with a lot of the older heavy hitters coming to an end, that things is definitely going to drastically change. But at the same time, with this first half of 2025 manga sales list, these are the top 10 manga that have sold thus far throughout the year, and pretty much, we're almost at the halfway point. We're pretty much almost 6 months, maybe by the time you've seen this we might be 6 months into the year at this point. So this is a reflection of what 2025 thus far has been for manga sales. Mind you, also, I will add in the caveat that it definitely seems as though manga sales are nothing like what they used to be a few years back, or even I would argue before the pandemic, because the pandemic kind of created this massive surge and manga sales were bigger than I've ever seen any sorts. Like series was selling 100 million in a couple years all of a sudden. Like, it was just insane to even think about. But even pre-pandemic, it seems as these numbers, because they're not also a reflection of digital sales, definitely is a lot lower than what manga sales used to be. I say all that to say, though, that that's because a lot of the importance had been pushed onto the anime. Anime licensing globally has become more of the, I guess you would say, bread and butter for Shueisha and a lot of these companies. So that's kind of, I'm assuming, where a lot of the attention has been put forth from the higher ups of like, focus on the anime right now, which has kind of been, to a certain degree, I don't want to say to the detriment, but definitely it has not benefited manga as much as a lot of people would have hoped. A lot of people would have hoped with anime and manga becoming so mainstream and so globally successful that manga would have also benefited. But it seems as though the anime benefited, but the manga, with the digital era as well. But this is the top 10, and we're gonna get into it and see what has been so far the hot tamales, so to speak, quote unquote, of manga for 2025. So coming in at number 10 with 1,300,753 copies is Kingdom. Kingdom is a long-running series. I think they, not that long ago, announced that the West was getting English copies of it. Kingdom, it's interesting to still see it in the top 10 all these years later, because I feel like almost every single year that I've ever talked about this, Kingdom has been in the top 10. So that's definitely speaking volumes on its staying power and how strong the fandom is, that it is still all these years later in the top 10. So salute to Kingdom. 1.3 mil. I would have to go back and compare the numbers to what it usually does, like in a halfway year mark. Then coming in at number 9 is a manga, being honest, not familiar with it, called Medalist, and it is at 1,313,454 copies. So roughly 13,000 copies, just barely edging out Kingdom. Medalist, yeah, I don't know, just doesn't seem for me in particular. So yeah, Medalist, let me know what you guys think of that one if you checked it out. I'm not even sure what is that. Now I actually want to look what company is pushing this. Okay, so apparently that's in monthly afternoon, and it's a seinen series. So I guess that's interesting to note that 2 seinen series, because Kingdom is also a seinen, 2 seinen series are in the top 10 selling manga of the year. Even if they're only with 1.3 million copies a piece, that's still a testament to, okay, seinen series are still popular. People still enjoy reading seinen series. Then coming in at number 8, a manga that at this point has become one of the flagship titles of Shonen Jump, and it's interesting to see that regardless of what the industry is doing, this series is still doing numbers. Sakamoto Days at number 8 with 1,374,539 copies sold. Sakamoto Days, from the bit that I read, it was fire, very different and unique, gave me a little tiny bit of Gintama vibes in a sense. I like that the main character is the way he is, and the action sequences is pretty dope. The fact that it got an anime in general is fire, and I don't know, it's interesting that that's the first shonen title for that matter in the top 10, because we got 2 seinens and then a shonen. But Sakamoto Days bringing the heat. Okay, I see the vision. Then number 7, coming in at number 7, this one a little bit higher up than those 3, because those 3 were all about 1.3 million a piece. And number 7 is a series that has been getting a lot of traction. Seen some of the anime. Interesting one. The Apothecary Diaries with 1,582,118 copies as of now. This list is really just a testament to how much things have changed with the world of anime and manga. This is not the scene that it was a few years back, 3 years back, 5 years back, 7 years back. This is not the same at all. Now we have the Apothecary Diaries, might even be seinen technically. I'm not sure exactly what it's labeled as, but it's not like a shonen battle by any means. And to see that in there is a testament to, I think, showcasing the readers that have, you know, kind of been introduced into the manga reading market, the fans that have been introduced to this manga reading market, or the market as a whole, because that's a different type of series altogether. Fascinating to see it in there. Yeah, number 7, the Apothecary Diaries. At number 6, this one, I kind of always saw that it had potential. I saw early on sports series have become a really strong staple now, going back to when Kuroko first blew up, Haikyuu, you know, dominated, whatnot. But I think that it's a really nice blend from what I know of it, and ultimately it's seemingly, you know, successful. People are rocking with it, because Blue Box came in at number 6 with 1,689,264 copies. It's a sports romance series. I believe the girl plays basketball and like they train together, and yeah, it was enjoyable from what I've seen and, you know, what I checked out of it. And again, another testament to, like, if you look at Blue Box and the Apothecary Diaries, 2 very different series than what the market has been historically. But then we go to the top 5, and it's an interesting concept, the top 5. And what I mean by that is a couple of these series are already over. So even though Shonen Battle is very heavy in the top 5, ultimately by the end of this year, some of these will not even be in there. So technically less Shonen Battle series, because coming in at number 5 is, y'all already know, one of my faves, My Hero Academia with 1,751,598 copies. But remember, My Hero is over. That is based off of the backs of either 1 or 2 volumes that were released towards the beginning of the year, or maybe with the end of the year. I forget. I want to say, yeah, it was like December. And of course, people still bought it in January, so on and so forth. So those are really numbers based off of the last volumes. Like, if something else comes out from My Hero, then maybe. But this is, I can't see it landing in the top 10 anymore after this time around. In fact, depending on what happens from here to the end of the year, it might not even be top 10, depending on what sells or whatnot, because again, there's no more volumes to put out. So while My Hero, a battle series, is top 5, it's technically over, and it won't be in this list moving forward starting next year, like for sure. So that's interesting to know. Then at number 4, this one, there's no denying its staying power, what it represents, what it is, and with very little volumes that get released, because remember, this series takes a lot of breaks, rightfully so, deservedly so. Shout out to Eiichiro Oda. One Piece, 1,839,799 copies with One Piece. What else can you say about it? You know what I'm saying? What more can you really say about One Piece other than it's a goated series? It's still massively popular, even if sales aren't what it was, you know, a few years back. Yeah, listen to what I've been saying this entire video about all of these series. That's the par for the course at this point. One Piece is still doing its thing, so just nothing but love, respect, and props. Then top three. At number 3, a series that I do remember really much so enjoying the first season at the very least, and I'm not surprised that it's in there because remember what I was saying about sports series. Blue Lock. It's a soccer series, heavily inspired, or there's elements that are inspired by real world stuff with Ronaldo and Messi and all that stuff. Like very, very popular series. It actually edged out One Piece just barely by what, 60,000 copies roughly. Blue Lock with 1,898,324 copies sold thus far. I need to get back into this series because I remember season 2 came out, and I think there was even the Nagi movie. I kind of wouldn't mind getting back into this one because it was fun and really exciting and gave me vibes of like a Kuroko no Basket, you know, sports with superpowers type of deal, or even, you know, the excitement you get from like a Haikyuu or stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna tap back into Blue Lock at some given point. Number 2, a series that has blown up and exploded in popularity, and well, I'll give you a little more of an addendum to my thoughts on exactly what I mean by how popular this thing is. It's more popular right now than you even knowing until I tell you what number 1 is, because Don at number 2 with 2,536,995 copies. The anime has done wonders. Most people that I run into have actually checked this out, heard of it, watched it. They think it's funny, etc., etc. It's very popular. In fact, it technically would be the number 1 series if it wasn't for another series that is over, which is hence why I say this is just dramatically shifting, because 2 of the top 5 would not even be here by next year. Jujutsu Kaisen at number 1 with 3,368,504 copies. 3.3 million copies coming in at number 1. But again, it's another series that it has released its final volume, so you take 2 of these series out of here by next year. Dandadan would technically be number 1. Blue Lock would be number 2. One Piece number 3, which is crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to downplay by any stretch of the imagination Jujutsu Kaisen or My Hero. You know, I talked about them and all that sort of stuff. It's just fascinating to see how much the industry has changed, how much it's shifted. Little by little, we're going to see just a whole different lineup, minus One Piece being in there until whenever Oda finally ends it. And I'm not mad either. Like, it's not like that I'm angry or disappointed or like, oh no. Sometimes change is good. You know, it can't be nothing but battle series forever and never. There's a nice variety in here. It's, you know, kind of more welcoming to newcomers. Maybe people don't always want to see fights and stuff like that. They want, you know, a calm sports romance, or, you know, something in the realm of like a Sakamoto Days. Like, there's so much more to offer. So I would say, as far as giving you a variety of titles, giving you a chance to not just only go for the big battling muscles, people swinging on each other, I think that's dope. I think that's awesome that manga has diversified itself throughout the years. So shout outs to this. I'm very curious what you guys think about this though. What do you think about the top 10 selling manga of 2025 thus far? Do you think, like, obviously I think maybe Jujutsu Kaisen might still be top 10. I'm not sure of My Hero. A lot of these series are nipping at its heels. Blue Box is only about what, 70k away from passing it, and the other ones are not far off either. So depending on what happens, My Hero could or could not be. Well, the anime is coming, so yeah, it'll still be. And Jujutsu Kaisen just had, yeah, My Hero and Jujutsu Kaisen will still ride it out this year. I take that back because the anime is coming from My Hero's final season. We got the Vigilantes anime out right now. Shout out to Vigilantes. Yeah, let me know your thoughts and your opinions on the top 10 selling manga of 2025 thus far. That's all I have for this one though. I'm Tim. As always, people, have an awesome day. Peace in. Man, it's Timothy, spiritually
hope you hearing me clear. These things cannot feel these beings, I done been through the same shit. Literally talking high-rise invasions, homie, but what is you phasing, homie? I'm saying this right now. Talking tough, that's a light round. Couldn't hold a candle to me, better grab a flashlight. Rolling with a black heart, even better, that's a fast light. Meaning you don't wanna go to war with me, man, I'm with it. Put it all on the table, roll the dice, homie, let's get it on.